So I actually would like to continue exactly the theme that my colleague from Vermont brought up. Except I think before we talk about artificial intelligence, we should talk about natural intelligence. And it absolutely goes against natural intelligence for us to sit here in this chamber knowing that we have 260,000 working American families who work for our government, who are doing their job and not getting paid. That, to me, is the crisis we should be talking about. And yes, I agree with my colleague from Vermont. We should not be worried about Mr. Musk or any of the other billionaires going hungry. I worry about our TSA agents going hungry. I worry about our Coast Guard people going hungry. I worry about the people at FEMA going hungry. And yet, with total disregard for over 250,000 families, we sit in this chamber and we're getting paid. Everybody here is getting paid, and yet they're not. And I applaud my colleague from Vermont who's walking out of the floor, caring about working Americans. Why don't we care about them? Why don't we fund DHS now? Why don't we worry about those families who, by the way, according to the last Secretary of Homeland Security, the last one said, and I'm going to quote here, the average TSA agent lives paycheck to paycheck. We've taken away 3 paychecks. 3 paychecks we've taken away from them. If there's ever a time that we need to fund DHS, it's now. This is not a Republican secretary saying that. It's a Democrat Secretary of Homeland Security saying that. I don't understand how in a leadership role, which is what we are here in the United States Senate, we would allow the suffering of 260,000 families to go with this much contempt and instead fund DHS in its entirety. Allow those families to get paid. Mr. President, you were a business guy like I was. Could you ever look at yourself in the mirror when you owned your businesses and know because of your actions the people who worked for you weren't getting paid and were suffering? It's impossible. I remember when I started my first business, I felt the weight of success because I had to take care of my family. But those early families for that first business that I bought, every day I walked in, I felt this incredible responsibility. Like, man, if I made bad decisions, like if I make a bad decision today, people will go hungry who work for me. And that drove me to succeed. We are totally disconnected here. We sit here in this chamber, it doesn't even touch any of us. And I think that's a disgrace. I think we should very simply do what's always been done before we became this hyper-partisan chamber. We fund the government responsibly. And then, if we have policy disagreements, we can sit down. By the way, right now, just down this hallway, there's Democrat colleagues and Republican colleagues of good faith sitting down to negotiate differences to get the Department of Homeland Security funded. We have American citizens that are paying taxes to fund a government to work that is not working. I know that sometimes pleading with my colleagues to have some level of humanity is ineffective, because quite frankly, maybe this place takes a little humanity away from you. Maybe you don't see how these decisions affect many, many people. So with that, Mr. President, I'm going to ask a very, very, very simple request. Very simple. I'm going to ask unanimous consent that this body, the United States Senate, proceed to immediate consideration of calendar number 156, H.R. 4553. I further ask that the substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered and read a third time and passed, and that the motions to be considered be made and laid upon the table. And what this means in English to the person who may be watching is this funds the entire Department of Homeland Security for 2 weeks. Everybody gets paid up to date. We get the department open, and then let the work that's being done now proceed. I ask that that happen.
Is there an objection? Senator from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. President, I object. And I think, look, all of us here understand, because we travel twice a week, what TSA is going through. That's why we should immediately today fully fund TSA. If you care about paying TSA, let's pay TSA today. Oh, I'm sorry. I object. If we want to actually pay TSA, let's do it right now. My colleague from Ohio, we both know what it's like to go back and forth to the Midwest every single week. Want to fund TSA? Want to have humanity for the people who are securing us? Let's fully fund them today.
So I'm not sure.
Senator from Ohio.
Sorry, Mr. President, sorry about that. I'm not sure what I just heard, because I just offered to fund TSA. I just offered to fund the Coast Guard, FEMA, Customs and Border Patrol, Secret Service, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Centers, USCIS, Homeland Security Investigations. So let's do it for 2 weeks. Let's do that for 2 weeks. Down the hall, there are senators of good faith that are getting together to end this political charade. So to my colleague, I will yield the floor for a simple question. Why would you want to fund just TSA and not the Coast Guard? Not, for example, in your state, the American Immigration Council is that deals with 102,700 undocumented immigrants in Michigan. Why wouldn't you want enforcement around that? Why wouldn't you want to fund the department that allows people like me, who when I was 18 years old applied for citizenship? Why wouldn't we want to fund 3,300 employees, some of them in your state, that actually process legal immigrants? Like, why wouldn't we fund that? Why wouldn't we fund 7,000 special agents that are there to stop transnational criminals? Why wouldn't we fund 200 employees that fund, and you were a CIA agent, that fund biological nuclear threat prevention? Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we fund 60,000 employees at Customs? You care a lot about the bridge that was hopefully due to be opened from Canada. You need Border Patrol agents there. You need Customs there. Why wouldn't we fund that? Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we do that for 2 weeks? 2 weeks. And then we can get together. Why wouldn't we do that? Why just fund one narrow slice of the Department of Homeland Security? I'm just curious why you would do that.
Will the senator yield? So here's the thing. I think
Michigan's recognized.
I'm sorry, pardon me. I think it is not hard to notice that right now our country is going through a pretty fundamental conversation about the role of ICE and law enforcement in our city streets. We know that it's a cultural conversation in the United States of America because the previous Secretary of Homeland Security got fired because of the disaster that went on in Minneapolis. I sat, as you did, in the hearing with Mark Wayne Mullen yesterday because we need a new Secretary of Homeland Security. Every American in the world, Democrat and Republican, understands that's because ICE so deeply contradicted American values in our American cities. So we're having a full-on cultural conversation about the role of law enforcement in our streets. In the meantime, you and I can agree every day of the week on the role of Border Patrol, CBP, FEMA, which we desperately need, Coast Guard, which no one has more Coast Guard pretty much than Michigan. So I'm ready to fund those things now. But I don't think we can ignore the fact that ICE is right now an unsettled issue in the United States of America. We're not settled. People are negotiating because we're not settled. And even this week, the President of the United States sent a letter down here to talk about the reforms he acknowledges we need in some form or fashion. Now, some of those reforms to me are like basic and don't go far enough, like we won't deport American citizens. But even the president acknowledges we have a problem with ICE. So let's excise that one part that we are having an American conversation on and then fully fund the other stuff here and now today. That's what I'm proposing.
Will you yield for a question?
Of course.
Thank you. Look, I appreciate, and I know you're a person of good character, by the way. I genuinely believe that. But that's not what you're asking for. You're asking to fund just TSA. But meaning the question is this. why would we use 260,000 people and their families as pawns in a negotiation? Why wouldn't we pay all those people? So will you consider adding a bill that I've put together that says that as long as we haven't fully funded the government, we get money taken out of our paychecks, not held in suspension, that we actually would lose compensation, about $500 a day, every day that goes by where we haven't fully funded the government. Would you consider adding that to your resolution?
Will you yield?
You have the floor.
Sorry, I don't know the rules here, but sorry, Mr. Speaker, if you have to.
The Senator from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you. So first of
President
all,
is enjoying this debate.
I am proposing today just the UC on TSA, but my colleagues, one after another, have proposed funding the Coast Guard, Border Patrol, FEMA. So whichever way we want to do the package, individually or all but ICE, I'm here for it. And I'll do you one better on your proposal. I 100% agree. When I first came into Congress in 2019, we were in a government shutdown in the first Trump administration, right? President Trump had a shutdown. That's how I came into Congress. And my very first bill as a congressperson, bipartisan, by the way, the Problem Solvers Caucus, a bunch of us did it, was that if the government isn't fully funded, then congresspeople, A, do not get paid, and B, I'll go one further, are not allowed to have government pay for their travel back home, meaning they have to sit their butts down in Washington and negotiate and get it done then and there without taking taxpayer dollars to go back home. So whether you want to add a $500 fee, whatever it is, this body is for appropriating money. So I'm here for whatever you want to propose. But I think you have to acknowledge, even the president acknowledges at this point, that the American public, Democrat, Independent, and Republican, does not like American citizens being killed in our streets. They do not like going into a human being's home without a judicial warrant. They don't like children being taken and tear gassed and caught in the crossfire. Non-well-trained officers pulling people out of cars and getting into dangerous situations. People being targeted. You should hate this. When you're walking into Target, they had ICE officers pulling people aside because they looked like they were immigrants and checking their papers. You know what that does to a Jew? You know what that means to just check people's papers because of how they look? You should hate that. So for me, whether we agree or disagree, and I would hope we'd agree on the use of force in America, set that aside, fund everything else today, now, here, penalize members of the Senate who want to go home and ignore the problem. I'm with you on that. But you are holding all of those agencies hostage because of ICE. You are defending them and not allowing them to get their paycheck. You are holding them back from those 3 paychecks, not Democrats. We are here ready to pay. You are so protective of ICE, so protective of this president that you will not fund the other parts of DHS, and that is our homeland security. I know about that. That is my entire life. You know, you care about that. I know you do, Senator. So please, just excise the thing we're not agreeing on, fund the rest of it, let's get on with it, and understand that the American public have made their voice clear on this issue.
We yield for
Senator from Ohio is recognized.
So, Homeland Investigations is part of ICE. It's 7,000 special agents that work for ICE that stop transnational criminals. You're not suggesting that we not fund them, are you?
I am suggesting that we get everybody in a room. Sorry, if I can yield. That we get everyone in a room on Homelands on the ICE issue. Lock them in a room here in the Capitol. Our negotiators. I need the president to send his envoy so we can actually make some decisions. It has been hard to negotiate with Senate Republicans on this issue because they need the blessing of the White House. Get all the players in a room. We will sit down. I'll do it. I'll be here all day and all night, all weekend. But I got to tell you, you can't use one group of people as a shield to not fund all the other border missions, all the other funding of the FEMA. You can't do it.
So one more question, with your permission. So nobody on your side has agreed to fund USCIS. You have not suggested that. USCIS is an independent part of the Department of Homeland Security. That has not been suggested by any Democrat. I appreciate that you are. Nobody has agreed to fund the Bioweapons of Mass Destruction Agency, not been suggested. And you've specifically, meaning not you personally, the Democrat senators have specifically said they do not want to fund customs, which you understand really well, what customs means, and border protection. Like that, these agencies that are listed on this board, there's been no movement among Democrats to fund this. And this is why my point is the same. I'm not suggesting to my colleague from Michigan at all that we permanently fund this forever. What I'm saying is 2 weeks. Let's reopen the Department of Homeland Security for 2 weeks. Let's let people of good faith, you and I, look, we agree on what you said. Let's take our paychecks away. Let's prevent us from flying home. Let's make us, I'll use your words, keep our butts here until we get this done. If that means today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, we can play pickleball in between. It'll be fantastic, okay? But we don't leave. If that means right through Easter, by the way, we do not leave this chamber. And we lose pay every day that goes by until we've funded the whole thing, because we can work it out. We can work this out. But I look at some of your colleagues who said they're serene as to where we are on this. I don't think there's 260,000 families that are serene about this, and I don't think you are either. So again, I would just ask that you amend your resolution to say let's fund the entire department for 2 weeks. We don't want to defund ICE. I'm not hearing you say that. I hear some of your other colleagues say that, but we're not looking to defund ICE, and we're certainly not going to stop Homeland investigations. Let's fund the whole thing for 2 weeks. Let's get the American people to understand we can get things done. Let's not absolutely leave, forget D.C., let's not leave this chamber, the Capitol, until we get this done. That's my ask, that's my plea.
Senator from Michigan.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of Calendar 362 S4127, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President?
Senator from Ohio is recognized.
Reserving my right to object, just to be clear what was just proposed. What was just proposed is to fund just TSA. Nothing else. Nothing else. And what's wrong with that, in case you didn't hear the peanut gallery, what's wrong with that is that there's hundreds of thousands of other government employees who, for no fault of their own, they did nothing wrong. They didn't do anything to do with what happened in Minneapolis. No role in that whatsoever. They go to work every day, doing the best they can to keep us safe. Mr. President, yesterday, for the first time in my life, I attended a dignified transfer ceremony in Dover. I'm thinking to myself, these 3 Ohioans, what did they die for? They died to preserve freedom for us. They didn't ask any questions. They went willingly. They volunteered. Can we honor their sacrifice by saying, do the right thing? Fund the Department of Homeland Security for 2 weeks. Senators, stay here without pay, not held pay, docked pay, because we haven't done our job. Article 1, we are the power of the purse. So I would ask one last time before concluding this. Can I get my colleague from Michigan, who's a good person, to agree to amend her proposal to fund the entire Department of Homeland Security for 2 weeks, and then force every senator, and I think that she has the influence to convince her colleagues to stay here without pay until this gets done.
Is there objection to the request?
Yeah.
I repeat, is there an objection to the request?
Yes.
I object.
The objection is heard. Is there an objection to the original request?
I, with a broken heart, object. And we did not do the right thing for the American people today, Mr. President. It's a shame. Politics got in the way of helping working Americans. It's a disgrace.
The objection is heard.